Today we're exploring the mysterious departure of puffins from Skellig Michael, a beautiful island off the County Kerry coast that should have been full of these adorable birds when we visited recently, but we didn't see a single one, which was a huge and curious bummer.
Just how many puffins should there be? Well, their numbers are usually in the thousands.
So many that the filmmakers for Star Wars: The Last Jedi, who used this historic island as the earthly stand-in for Octo, couldn't edit all the adorable birds out of the footage.
Mom, there are no puffins in the movie.
Oh no, there are no puffins? Well, with a little CGI magic, all those puffins became the adorable porgs. Puffin problem solved.
We can't really show you a porg here, but they kind of look like this.
So needless to say, the puffins should be everywhere around this place during our summer visit. But they all took off a few days early this year, leaving bird watchers and the National Parks and Wildlife Service and tourists like us scratching their heads.
So today, we're going to get to the bottom of the case of the disappearing porgs.
Puffins. Did the porgs disappear too?
Puffins return to the Skellig Islands every spring around April, turning these rocky havens into their temporary homes during their breeding season.
These adorable birds, referred to affectionately by well-earned nicknames like clowns of the sea, form monogamous pairs, often returning to the same partner year after year. Now, the puffin parents lay a single egg in early summer, and then they take turns incubating the egg for 36 to 45 days until the puffling hatches. Puffling. This is so cute.
Their nests are strategically placed underground in burrows along grassy banks or rocky crevices to provide safety for their little chicks until it fledges in late July to early July-August.
July-August?
Let me try that again.
I like July-August. So these are where the puffins would have been. These little holes are all their nests, and it's dotted all over the island. But as you can hear, there's no shortage of seabirds on this island. Hey, it's time for a fun mom fact. Yeah, I have fun facts to share with the people too sometimes. Do you know how puffin parents get their pufflings to leave the nest? Okay, well, let me tell you. When the time is right, the parents just leave the chicks in the nest one day to fend for themselves. So the little fledgling gets hungrier and hungrier until it finally realizes that its parents aren't going to come back and feed it anymore. So eventually it decides to head off to sea to go catch its own fish. Finally. I'm just saying.
You know you can't just leave me to starve, right?
That was really loud. I mean, no, I'm not going to leave you to starve. Yet. It's a good thing you're not a puffin. Anyway, once the breeding season is over, those puffins migrate offshore. Now, there's a lot we don't know about these birds, especially once they head out to sea. But tracking data suggests that they may migrate across the North Atlantic towards Canada before they just kind of hang out in the middle of the North Atlantic Ocean, diving for fish, bobbing around, until it's time to head back to the islands for breeding in the spring.
Why do they keep coming back to this area?
Good question. Because it's beautiful with amazing history and features? Probably not. But also, if you want to learn more about the amazing history and features of this island, we have a video for that you should totally check out later. But actually, puffins choose spots with few terrestrial predators, and all the historical and wildlife protections here on this island have so far kept creatures like foxes and rats that would totally eat these puffins off this rock. So the history is kind of keeping things safe for these puffin families.
The bounty of food also helps the puffins living around Skellig Michael survive. Because there's so much there, they have so much food to eat and so much to give their little hatchlings.
They're little babies. This is also why you find a lot of other seabirds making this location home.
Everyone loves a puffin!
In fact, Little Skellig, which is the little island that's right next to Michael Skellig, has the largest gannet colony in all of Ireland with an estimated 35,000 breeding pairs, which is just a lot of birds.
And bird poop.
And bird poop.
Skellig Michael can host a large number of seabirds because of where it's located. Right on a buffet of all things birds love to eat.
It sits on a fertile area of the continental shelf, which benefits from upward movements of nutrient-rich water from the nearby Porcupine Basin. Now, the currents around this area bring together fish and plankton, making the habitat rich in a lot of different food options.
Because puffins reproduce slowly, they are extra sensitive to impacts like bird flu, pollution, or invasive species decimating the colony.
And in some places in the world, we know the puffin populations are in serious decline, leading to their classification as endangered by the IUCN, the International Union for Conservation of Nature.
Are these parts of the reason why puffins left early? Here's what we know.
Bird flu has been absolutely devastating to colonies of seabirds, in particular terns and gannets in Ireland, Northern Ireland, and generally throughout the UK. But there's no evidence that avian flu is currently impacting these puffins and responsible for their early departure. At least not this year, but the impact of bird flu on these creatures is absolutely being closely monitored.
So what about the changes in food availability?
Well, you're right. Changes in availability of food associated with climate change is impacting seabirds and certainly puffins.
One recently published study suggests that more than half the seabird species in the UK and Ireland have declined during the past 20 years, with a particular concern with the recent declines in puffin population.
And there are likely lots of reasons for these declines, including increases in invasive predators and commercial fishing, depleting fish stocks, so there's more danger and less food for our winged friends. Of course, climate change also has many different and intertwined negative impacts on these birds. Increases in adverse weather events can impact the availability of nesting sites and make finding food more difficult. And changes in water temperature and currents also impact the availability of food.
So, these birds struggle to find a good home and enough food to sustain themselves.
The majority of the global puffin population actually is found in Europe, around 90%, with more than half of these birds breeding in Iceland.
And if we look at Iceland's puffin population, we see a stark warning.
Recent evidence suggests puffin populations in Iceland may have declined as much as 70% over the past 30 years. One recent study has shed light on the devastating reason why. The chicks are literally starving to death in the nest because the puffin parents are not able to find enough food to keep them healthy and growing. Because of disruptions in the availability of food driven by climate change, the parents are needing to fly much farther to find food, sometimes as far as 100 kilometers round trip. So the chicks get less fish, they get poor quality fish less often, and they don't grow as well, and so they just outright starve. It's awful.
And remember, puffins only have one chick each breeding cycle. And while adult puffins have relatively long lives, this means that once we see such significant declines in their population, it's really hard for them to recover without intensive conservation efforts.
They just don't breed enough puffins fast enough to replace the dying adult puffins quickly enough, and the colony just eventually collapses.
But here's where we maybe got some good news to cheer you up from the idea of starving puffins.
From what the National Parks and Wildlife Service can tell, it doesn't seem like the puffins leaving Skellig Michael early is a sign of breeding collapse or avian flu or any of these other dire consequences.
There's some evidence to suggest that these puffins have left the island early before.
And their departure, while notable, wasn't dramatically early, so nothing here suggests a major or alarming change in the behaviors of this population. In fact, survey data from the island's puffin count suggests that this population might be doing relatively well, which is really good news because while areas around the UK and Ireland only host about 10% of the global puffin population, with the declines we're seeing in other traditional habitats like those in Iceland, it may become a really important minority in the species' survival. So for now, we're hopeful our puffin friends at Skellig Michael may be around the next time we make it out there to visit. And if we do, you will not want to miss that adventure, so subscribe and join us. We are very, very fun on a trip. I promise. Oh, that's the best puffin face you've made yet. I mean, pork face. I mean, you knew what I meant. Pork, puffin, pork. They're all the same.